Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jalavallabha Srivadhari Yasodanandana Vajajanaranyana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Giridhari Yasodanandana Vajajanaranyana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Giridhari Yasodanandana Vajajanaranyana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Yam Vishnupat Paramahamsa Pravachakacharya Srotarasata Shishmat His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Srimad Bhagavatam Ganzaraj Ki Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. Oh glory is the symbol of devotees. Oh glory is the symbol of devotees. Oh glory is the symbol of devotees. Oh glory is Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are continuing on with text 36. We're going to read the second half of the purport, and this is the last of the Chatus slokas. The prime slokas spoken by Lord Vishnu to Lord Brahma. Etavadeva jigyasam Tattva jignasunatmanaha Anvaya vyatikehadyam Yat yat sarvatra sarvada etavadeva jignasyam tattva jignasunatmanaha anvaya vyatireklabhyam yat shat sarvatra sarvada. Etavat, up to this, eva, certainly, jigyasam, is to be inquired. Tattva, the absolute truth. Jigyasuna, by the student. Atmana, of the self. Anvaya, directly. Vyatarikabhyam, indirectly. Yat, whatever. Shat, it may be. Sarvatra, in all space and time. Sarvada, in all circumstances. Translation: a person who is searching after the Supreme Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead, most certainly search for it up to this in all circumstances, in all space and time, and both directly and indirectly. So it's a 10-page purport, and if you know Prabhu purports that he left me half, but I don't know, it sort of seems to be quite lengthy, so please bear with us. And very ecstatic last half of the purport, full of nectar. I'll just find it. A second ago. Let's talk about Sri Jiva Goswami. So, okay, here we go. So, Sri Jiva Goswami, Prabhupada, therefore comments on the words Sarvatra Sarvada in the sense that the principles of Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service to the Lord, are apt in all circumstances. That is, Bhakti Yoga is recommended in all the revealed scriptures. It is performed by all authorities. It is important in all places. It is useful in all causes and effects, etc. As far as all the revealed scriptures are concerned, it quotes from the Skanda Purana on topics of Brahma and Narada as follows: Samsare Smin Mahagore Janma Mrityu Samakule Pujyan Vasudevasya Tarikam Varipi Smritam. In the material world, which is full of darkness and dangers combined with birth and death and full of different anxieties, the only way to get out of the great entanglement is to accept loving transcendental devotional service to Lord Vasudeva. This is accepted by all classes of philosophers. Srila Jiva Goswami also quotes another common passage which is found in 3 Puranas, namely Padma Purana, Skanda Purana, and Linga Purana, it runs as follows: Aloja Sarva Sastra Nivacharya Chapanapana Idam Ekam Nispanam Jayo Narayana Sadha. By scrutinizingly reviewing all the real scriptures and judging them again and again, it is now concluded that Lord Narayan is the supreme absolute truth, and thus he alone should be worshipped. The same truth also indirectly described in Garuda Purana as follows: Paramgato Pivedanam Sarva Shastratara Videpi Yona Sarvishvara Bhaktastam Vidyat Purushadamam. Even though one may have gone to the other side of the Vedas, and even though one is well versed in all the real scriptures, if one is not a devotee of the Supreme Lord, he must be considered the lowest of mankind. Similarly, it's also stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 5.18.12 indirectly as follows: Yashyasti Bhakti Bhagavati Kinchana Sarve Gunastatra Samatsura Harava Kasya Kuto Mahaguna Manoratis Nati Davo Bahi. One who is in flinching devotion unto the Supreme Person of Godhead must have all good qualities of the demigods. And contrarily, one who is not a devotee of the Lord must be hovering in the darkness of mental speculation, and thus must be engaged in material impermanence. Srimad Bhagavatam 11.11.18 says, Sabda Brahmani Nishnato Na Nishnapari Adi Shramastasya Shramapalo Hi Adinam Eva Rakshata. Got the word Shrama here. Ever anybody heard the word Shrama before? It's a famous Shrama Hi Eva Kevalam, that famous sloka in the Bhagavatam, that useless waste of time, one who does not see the deities, his eyes are like those of peacock feathers. And what's the other one? That his ears are like the holes of snakes. The snakes can't hear. Right? They go sound vibration. So that's Shrama, useless. So we've got Shrama here, so expect something really profound to come out in the translation. We're all ready. One may be well versed in all the transcendental literature of the Vedas, but if he fails to be acquainted with the Supreme, then it must be concluded that all of his education is like the burden of a beast, or like once keeping a cow without milking capacity. Similarly, the liberty of discharging devotional transcendental service to the Lord is invested in everyone, even women, Sudras, forest tribes, or any other living entity, or other living beings born in sinful conditions. Te vavidanti taranti cha deva mayam Sri Sudra Kuna Shabara Api Papajivaha Yadi Adbhuta Krama Paryanashalashkyastirajani Apikama Shrittaranache. Bhagavatam, the lowest human beings can be elevated to the highest stage of devotional service if they are trained by the bona fide spiritual master well versed in transcendental loving service to the Lord. If the lowest can be so elevated, what to speak of the highest, who are well versed in Vedic knowledge? The conclusion is that devotional service to the Lord is open for all, regardless who they are. That is the confirmation of its application for all kinds of performance of this service. Therefore, devotional service to the Lord with perfect knowledge through training of a bona fide spiritual master's advice for everyone, even if one happens not to be a human being. This is confirmed Garuda Purana as follows: Kitta Pakshi Maganam Chahuro Sanyasta Cheta Samudvam Eva Gatim Manye Kimpurna Ninamritam. Even the worms, the birds, and the beasts are assured of elevation to the highest perfection of life if they completely surrender to transcendental loving service to the Lord. What to speak of the philosophers amongst the human beings? Does that scene conjure up any pastime in your minds about worms, birds, and beasts all surrendering to the Lord? Jarikanda forest. Yes, Lord Chaitanya was going through Jarikanda. He was so ecstatic, so absorbed in chanting the holy names that even all the beasts were attracted, the elephants, the tigers, the alligators, to speak, of everything. Yeah, so all attractive. Therefore, there is no need to seek properly qualified candidates for discharging devotional service to the Lord. So this is Prabhupada, this next paragraph is so beautiful. He goes on, I don't know what the terminology is, but it's very poetic, so I'll try and do it justice. Let them be either well-behaved or ill-trained. Let them be either learned or fools. Let them be either grossly attached or in the roundness or the life. Let them be liberated souls or desirous of salvation. Let them be an expert in the discharge of devotional service or expert in the same. All of them can be elevated to the supreme position by discharging devotional service under the proper guidance. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:30 to 32 as follows. Anyone know 9:30? This is prize here. Get a prize. Yep. Api chetsu daracharo bhajate mama nanyabhak sadhur eva samanta vyasamya vyavasato hissa. And then mamhi parta vyapashricha yepishu papayonia striyo vaishyas tata sudras taripam hangatim. Even if a person is fully addicted to all sorts of sinful acts, if he happens to be engaged in the loving service of the Lord under proper guidance, is to be considered the most perfect holy man without a doubt. And thus any person whatsoever and whosoever he or she may be, even the fallen woman, the less intelligent labourer, the dull mercantile man. Maybe Prabhupada asked Prabhupada if he could have included lawyers and politicians. Also the next one too. Or even man lower than all of these can attain the highest perfection of life by going back home, back to Godhead, provided he or she takes shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord in all earnestness. This sincere earnestness is the only qualification that can lead one to the highest perfectional stage of life. And until such earnestness is aroused, there is a difference between cleanliness or uncleanliness, learning or non-learning in a material estimation. Fire is always fire. And thus if someone touches the fire knowingly or unknowingly, the fire will act in its own way without discrimination. The principle is Hari Harati Prapani Dusta Chitera Pismrita. The all-powerful Lord can purify devotee of all sinful reactions, just as the sun can sterilize all sorts of infections by its powerful rays. Attractions for material enjoyment cannot act upon a pure devoted Lord. There are hundreds and thousands of aphorisms in the revealed scriptures, so Prabhupada delineates a couple of these one-line aphorisms. Atmanascha munaya. Even the self-realized souls are attracted by the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Kechit kavalya bhaktya vasudeva parayana. Simply by hearing and chanting, one becomes a great devotee of Lord Vasudeva. Na chalati bhagavat padarvindalavasimadaram api sa vaishyam griha. Person who does not move from the lotus feet of the Lord even for a moment or a second is to be considered the great all Vaishnava. Bhagavat prasadatam prapte matsevaya pratitam te. The pure devotee is convinced of attaining and associating personality of Godhead, and thus they're always engaged in the loving service of the Lord. Therefore, in all here's another one, Srila Prabhupada, one of the beautiful poetic paragraphs. Therefore, in all continents, in all planets, in all universes, devotional service to the Lord or Bhakti Yoga is current. And that is the statement of the Srimad Bhagavatam and allied scriptures. Everywhere means in part of the creation of the Lord. Everywhere means in every part of the creation of the Lord. The Lord can be served by all the senses or even simply by the mind. The South Indian Brahmana, who served the Lord simply on the strength of his mind, also factually realised the Lord. I think Srila Prabhupada is alluding to that point in time when this Brahmana was poor in his mind. He was cooking sweet rice for the Lord, and he wanted to see if it had cooled down enough for the Lord to eat. So in his mind, he put his finger in the sweet rice and then he actually burnt his finger. There's few occasions that that's happened in the Shastras. Success is guaranteed for a devotee who fully engages any one of his senses in the mode of devotional service. The Lord can be served by any ingredient, even the most common commodity, flower, a leaf, fruit, or a little water, which is available in any part of the universe and without cost. And thus the Lord is served universally by universal entities. He can be served simply by hearing. He can be served simply by chanting or reading about his activities. He can be served simply by adoring him and accepting him. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that one can serve the Lord by offering the result of one's own work. It does not matter what one does. Generally, men say that whatever they're doing is inspired by God. But that is not all. One should actually work on behalf of God as a servant of God. The Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita 9:27, Yat karasya rasdasya jehosi dadasi yatmat yat tapasasya kuntiya tat kurushva madarpanam. Do whatever you like, whatever may be easier for you to do. Eat whatever you may eat, sacrifice whatever you sacrifice, give whatever you may give in charity, and do whatever you may undertake in penance, but everything must be done for him only. If you do business or if you accept some employment, do so on behalf of the Lord. Whatever you may eat, you may offer the same to the Lord, and be assured that he will return the food after eating it himself. He is the complete whole, and therefore whatever you may eat as offered by the devotee is accepted because of the devotee's love. But again it is returned as prasad for the devotee so he can be happy by eating. In other words, be a servant of God and live peacefully in that consciousness, ultimately returning home back to Godhead. It is said in the Skanda Purana, Yasya Smritina Mokkacha Tapo Yagya Kriyaradishu Nunam Samparanatum Chi Sajo Banditam Achyutam. I offer my obeisances unto him, the infallible, because simply by either remembering him or vibrating his holy name one can attain the perfection of all penances, sacrifices or fruitive activities, and this process can be universally followed. It is enjoined in the Srimad Bhagavatam 2.3.10. Who knows this one? Starts with a karma. Go and hit us. Hit it loud. Beautiful sloka. Though a person be full of desires or have no desires, he may follow this path of infallible Bhakti Yoga for complete perfection. One need not be anxious to propitiate each and every demigod and goddess, because of the root of all of them is the personality of Godhead. As by pouring water on the root of a tree, one serves and enlivens all branches and leaves. So by rendering devotional service, rendering service unto the Supreme Lord, one automatically serves every god and goddess without extraneous effort. Notice that the Srila Prabhupada put the emphasis on God and goddess with a small g, sub-god. The Lord is all-pervading, and therefore service unto him is also all-pervading. This fact is corroborated in the Skanda Purana as follows: Archite Devadeva Shya Shanka Chakra Gadadare Archita Sarvadeva Shur Yatta Sarvagato Hari. When the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, who carries in his hands a conch shell, lotus, wheel, yeah, and one more, club. So This law is worshipped. Certainly, all other demigods are worshipped automatically because of Hari, personality of Godhead. It's all pervading. Therefore, in all cases, namely nominative. So get this, all right? You ready? You're paying attention? So in all cases, namely nominative, objective, causative, dative, ablative, possessive, and supportive. Everybody is benefited by such transcendental loving service to the Lord. So, Srila Prabhupada elaborates a bit on that. The man who worships the Lord himself who is worshipped, the cause for which the Lord is worshipped, the source of supply, the place where such worship is done, etc. Everything is benefited by such an action. Even during the annihilation of the material world, the process of bhakti yoga can be applied. Kalina nashta pralaya varinam. The Lord is worshipped in devastation because he protects the Vedas from being annihilated. He's worshipped in every millennium or yuga. This is said in Srimad Bhagavatam 12:352. Krite yadyayato vishnum chetayam jajato makaed vapare parachatyam kalo tadavi kirtana. In Vishnu Purana it is written, Sahanistan Jadram Sa Maha Sa Viramaha Yan Muhartam Shanam Vapi Vasudevam Chintaya. Even if for a moment remembrance of Vasudeva, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is missed, that is the greatest loss. That is the greatest illusion. That is the greatest anomaly. I think in our case we could say that even if for a moment we can remember the Lord, we are very, very fortunate. I speak of losing a moment, of forgetting him. I speak for myself, of course. The Lord can be worshipped in all stages of life. For instance, even the wombs of the mothers, Maharaj Pariksit, For instance, in the wombs of their mothers, Maharaj Prahlad, Maharaj Pariksit worshipped the Lord. Even his very childhood, at the age of only 5 years, Dhruva, Maharaj worshipped the Lord. Even in full youth, Maharaj Ambarish worshipped the Lord. And even at the last stage of his frustration and old age, Maharaj Dhritarashtra worshipped the Lord. Ajmil worshipped the Lord even at the point of death. And Chitketu worshipped the Lord even in heaven and in hell. In the Srimad Purana it is said, last 2 pages, hellish inhabitants. Okay, we'll start. This is classic, this one. In the Srimad Purana it is said that as the hellish inhabitants began to chant the holy name of the Lord, they began to be elevated from hell towards heaven. The Rasamuni also supported this view. Muchite yan namyu ditanarokapi. Simply by chanting the holy name of the Lord, the inhabitants of hell became released from their hellish persecution. So the conclusion of Srimad Bhagavatam is given by Sukadeva Goswami to Maharaj Pariksit. Etan nirvidyamananam itchatam akatobayam yoginam nirpaninitam hare naman kirtanam. O King, it is finally decided that everyone, namely those in the renounced order of life, the mystics, and the enjoyers of fruit of work, should chant the holy name of the Lord fearlessly to achieve the desired success in their pursuit. Srimad Bhagavatam 2.1.11. Similarly, as indicated indirectly in various places in revealed scriptures, 6 points here. Number 1, even though one is well versed in all the Vedas and scriptures, one is not a devotee of Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, he is considered to be the lowest of mankind. 2, Garuda Purana, Brihadaranyaka Purana and Padma Purana, the same is repeated. What is the use of Vedic knowledge and penances for one who is devoid of devotional service to the Lord? 3, what is the comparison of thousands of Prajapatis to one devotee of the Lord? For Sukadeva Goswami said, Bhagavatam 2.4.17, that neither the aesthetic, nor one who is greatly munificent, nor one who is famous, nor the great philosopher, nor the great occultist, nor anyone else can achieve the desired result without being engaged in the service of the Lord. Even if a place is more glorious than heaven, if there is no glorification of the Lord of Vaikuntha or his pure devotee, it should at once be quitted. Number 6, the pure devotee refused to accept all the 5 different types of liberation in order to be engaged in the service of the Lord. The final conclusion, therefore, is that the glories of the Lord must be always and everywhere proclaimed. One should hear about his glories, one should chant about his glories, and one should always remember his glories, because that is the highest perfectional stage of life. As far as fruit of work is concerned, it is limited to an enjoyable body. As far as yoga is concerned, it is limited to the acquirement of mystic power. As far as empiric philosophy is concerned, it is limited to the attainment of transcendental knowledge. As far as transcendental knowledge is concerned, it is limited to attainment of salvation. Even if they are adopted, there is every chance of discrepancies in discharging the particular type of functions. But adoption of the transcendental devotional service of the Lord has no limit, nor is there fear of falling down. The process automatically reaches the final stage by the grace of the Lord. In the preliminary stage of devotional service, there is an apparent requisite for knowledge, but in the higher stage there is no necessity of such knowledge. Best and guaranteed path of progress is therefore engagement in Bhakti Yoga, pure devotional service. The cream of Srimad Bhagavatam in the foregoing 4 slokas is sometimes squeezed out by the impersonalists for different interpretations in their favour. But it should be carefully noted that the 4 slokas were first described by the personality of God himself, and thus the impersonalist has no scope to enter into them, because he has no conception of the personality of Godhead. Therefore, the impersonalists may squeeze out any interpretation from them, but such interpretations will never be accepted by those who are taught in the disciplic succession from Brahma, as will be cleared up in the following verses. Besides that, the Shruti confirms that the supreme truth, absolute personality of Godhead, never reveals himself to anyone who is falsely proud of his academic knowledge. The Shruti mantra clearly says, Katha-upanishad, Nayam atma pravachanena labhyo namedayana bahudha shrutena yamavaishya rinute tenalabhyas tasya atma vivranute tahum svam. The whole matter is explained by the Lord himself, and one has no approach to the Lord in his personal feature. I'll read this again. This is the very last paragraph. The whole matter is explained by the Lord himself, and one who has no approach to the Lord in his personal feature can really understand the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam without being taught by the Bhagavatas in disciplic succession. Om Gyana Timirandasya Jananjala Salakaya Chaksur Militan Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namah Durgame Parimandasya Skalapate Katimahu Vakri Payustadanana Shanta Shanta Valambanam. So that was the conclusion of the 4 seed slokas. I should read the doesn't matter. So we've all sat patiently throughout them, and as Vinod Prabhu was delineating yesterday, that they are very deep. They go so far that from those 4 slokas, the whole Bhagavatam evolves into 18,000 verses. It talks about the glories of the Lord, glories of the Lord in all his incarnations, the glories of the devotees who serve the Supreme Lord, the ways and means for serving the Lord, and so on. And so therefore we have this beautiful Srimad Bhagavatam, and Srila Prabhupada concludes in the last chapter that the Bhagavatam is there for people to come to that platform understanding the nature of the Supreme Lord. And to do that, you actually have to take shelter of the disciplic succession. So throughout these 4 slokas, Srila Prabhupada has mentioned some key points time and time again, and emphasized them through so many quotes, through so many different shastras, through the different Puranas, the Sringa Purana, the Upanishads, so many different quotes just to establish this fact. And then, of course, we had Vinod Prabhu was a very, very learned fellow, learned in Sanskrit, and he elaborated also Sanskrit verses and Sanskrit meanings, and established that the seed slokas are there and the certain points are there. So I'll just maybe give a little bit of my understanding, what I saw from Srila Prabhupada's purport. So one thing that was mentioned here in the second part of this purport, in no uncertain terms, that Srila Prabhupada elaborately explained that we, the created beings, as humans and other creatures who have the misfortune to be born in this age of Kali, as is elaborated in the Srimad Bhagavatam, pray now, Puyasya Sabya Kalosmin Yugeri Jana. So that sloka, that famous sloka in the first canto, text 10, pray now, Payusha. The first word is that the beings who are born in this age of Kali Yuga have very meagre lives. Our lives are very, very short span, meagre. Kalo is minugation, manda sumanda, that we are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, manda bhagyo, padrata, and padrata, almost always disturbed. So we are the creatures of Kali Yuga. And according to Srila Prabhupada's summation, and according to the different shastras, that practically every living being is in that position. We're all misfortunate. He delineates some, but basically it's everyone. So we are wallowing in this age, which is a very inauspicious age. But there is a silver lining, just like they say there's a cloud, like they say, saying, there's every cloud has a silver lining. We all heard that one. Or is that just an old one from the last century? Given that. So every cloud has a silver lining. So in the Kali Yuga, there is a silver lining that we can achieve the highest perfection, the love of Godhead, love of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Not only Narayan, but the Supreme Person, the one who manifests Narayan, is Sri Krishna. And that love of Godhead goes beyond anything. As Srila Prabhupada pointed out, it goes beyond the 5 types of liberation, including Sayuja, which is merging with the rays of the Lord, not even knowing this personality of Godhead. And that 5 types of liberation is that is what is practiced by other 3 ages. But this love, this highest perfection, was not even available in the previous ages. So in the other ages, they just used to strive for that liberation. Vaikuntha, associate with Lord Narayan in Vaikuntha, to be on the same planet as him, have his personal association, or to have the same opulence as Lord Narayan. How good would that be? So opulent, flying in so many beautiful airplanes with so much. So that was the on the spiritual platform eternally, liberated. That's eternal liberation. So that's what was being practiced. So in the other ages, it was also way more auspicious, like Satyuga was always saturated in the mode of goodness. And then the next stage, which came, Treta Yuga, that was the mode of passion. And then after that, Dwarpa Yoga was said it was mixed with ignorance and ignorance and passion. And in Kali Yuga, pure ignorance. Manda Sumanda Mataya, Manda Bhagya Bhagavata. Srila Prabhupada actually, in his purport, he mentioned the Srimad Bhagavatam. He just quoted the sloka. Srimad Bhagavatam, there was 12.3.52 in the 12th canto. And the translation to that was actually, whatever results that was achieved in the age of Satyuga through meditation on the Lord's lotus feet. So that was the process. Many, many years, thousands, some yogis meditate for thousands of years on the lotus feet of the Lord to achieve perfection. In Treta Yuga, it was sacrifices. Sometimes there's a bit of conjecture about the word sacrifice in this modern age. We can say ritualistic performance of ceremonies, the yajnas. Next stage, Dwapara Yuga, we had worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord, Lord Vishnu, temple worship, and all of these that were there, all these processes, it's said that it can be attained in Kali Yuga simply by the reciting the Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So all that is shortcutted by just one simple mantra. Even more than that, it's said that all these results can be attained, but there's even more than that. Just Rupa Goswami explains that when one begins to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, then his tongue becomes uncontrollable and wants to desire many, many tons so he can taste the sweetness of the holy names. And when it enters into the holes of the ears, and one wants millions of ears, you can't have enough. It's like parched ears, like desert falling on, like rain falling on parched soil in the desert. When you hear more and more and more, get more. And then he describes that when it enters into the courtyard of the heart and all the senses become still, we attain peace. So that is a wonderful benediction, and Srila Prabhupada talks about the glories of it elaborately in the purport here, saying anyone can take to it. Don't think that you're a fallen soul, that you're this or you're that. Don't think that the Bhagavatam says you're not eligible. That actually, if you think like that, if you think that someone is limited by their caste, creed, birth, gender, whatever, then they are sadly mistaken. They've misinterpreted the Srimad Bhagavatam, and they have no hope of understanding who the Supreme Personality of Godhead is. So these 4 seed slokas that we've just discussed have established that Krishna, for a start, he's the Supreme Absolute Truth, that is Supreme Personality of Godhead, that he exists eternally and is the creator of everything, all material and inferior and energies, any energy that comes from him, everything is inside and outside of him. So, therefore, he's all-encompassing. And moreover, he's pure spiritual energy, which is full of Satchit Ananda Vigraha, eternity, bliss and knowledge, and full eternal form. Vigraha is form. So we're also the spiritual energy that's mentioned here, that we're just part and parcel of Krishna, but some people misinterpret that to think that we can become Krishna too, because we're spiritual. We're just sort of having a moment here with the material modes, but once we become free of them, then we can become God. But 12th canto, Srila Prabhupada elaborates in the purport of the first seed sloka there, saying that the spirit soul, we, the spirit soul, are compared to fire and heat. Krishna is the fire, we're the heat. So can the heat become fire, Tanner? Can the heat ever become fire?
Yes and no.
No, not really. It can heat things up and it can cause a fire, but it can never become the fire itself. It's just a product of fire. So therefore we're a product of Krishna. That's the same example that we're given, that Krishna is the fire, we're like the product with the heat that's caused from the fire. So therefore we are here in this form as spiritual souls, but unfortunately, because we chose to ignore Krishna at some point in time in our relationship, that we came to this material world and we've just become obliterated, covered by these material bodies, unrecognisable. I'm trying to think of an example, just like if there's a mud fight or something, you get caught in the mud, you're trying to pull a car out of the mud and you're just literally covered in mud and you can't see your shape or your form or your existence. So we're totally covered by this material energy, and it's like a darkness. Even though we're moving in this material energy to fulfill our desires, and we think in this illusory state that we're this body, still we're so covered over, just like we have the example of a whale. What a massive creature in the ocean. It's huge, as big as a ship, this huge body. But the spirit soul is the same size as us. It's just got this huge gross body. And he thinks he's a whale and he's happy swimming around this body. And then when he gets beached, you can see that, wow, it's this huge skeleton. So it's material matter. It's not very nice when it starts to decay. It's just all these elements start decaying. So in the 12th canto, I better get a move on here. In the 12th canto, Sukadeva Goswami gives the example of the sun, how the sun, by the sun's actions, the sun shines on the sea, shines light and heat on the sea, and what happens is the clouds begin to lift from the sea and they form little moistures of dew, whatever, become clouds. So in the monsoon season, when it's really, really hot, there's lots of vapour, moisture is drawn up into the sky and the clouds become very, very dark and ominous, and then they cloud out the sun. So they're a product of the sun, but they block out the sun. But actually, by the sun's rays, it can actually dissipate these clouds also, and then it shines through, and then the clouds vanish, and you see the sun once again. So this is Krishna. He's like the sun, and material energy is like the clouds. So when we're covered over by this material energy, when we understand our relationship with Krishna, that we're part and parcel of Krishna in this aspect, then we realise our own true nature, and all the clouds of material illusion, they disappear, and then we become self-realised. So this is the goal of all human beings, to attain self-realisation. So just running out of time here, I don't know where to go. Anyway, the goal, Srila Prabhupada elaborates that, so we have Sanskrit, we have the word, I'll just quickly mention this point of Dharma. That is the goal, Dharma. So Prabhupada mentions a lot about the occupational duties of people in this world. So there is misconstruence of Dharma in this modern world that we have today, that people think that Dharma is just occupational duty, and that is it. Just like I have some famous saint politician in India said that service to man is service to God. Right? So that is not really, Prabhupada explains that is not actually the correct understanding, because actually service, it's service to God, that's the occupational loving service that we should be doing. Service to God is the main preoccupation, not service to man. So sometimes if we do service to man, it's not necessarily service to God. It becomes convoluted. So in the world today that the Dharma, people say, oh, this is my religion or it's my occupational service, but they actually exclude religion. It's not really religion, it's just what you're doing to exist on the material sphere. And then when you say, well, Dharma actually means, but through serving, through doing your occupational duties, you naturally progress to serving God. They're not really interested because they don't want to surrender to any authority that tells you that this is what God wants you to do. It's not very appropriate these days. Just like, I'll just give a quick example of when I was at school. I used to go to Marist Brothers School, Catholic school, and we used to have this very fierce-looking brother called Brother Crispin. We named him Tosca, because Crispin was sort of a candy bar, and then there was a Tosca, so we called him Tosca, right? So Tosca, he was really an avid sports fanatic. He loved his football and his cricket. He was a cricket coach, right, and football coach, and he lived for it. But he also happened to be a religious teacher, right? So when it came to religious class, he'd be sitting there, he'd get his newspaper out, he goes, all right, I want you guys to copy out the 27th ecumenical edicts of the Papal Council of Rome, 1963. So we'd be all copying this useless piece of information out, and he'd be reading his paper. Because he thought it was a waste of time. It was just all ritualistic, and it was boring, and he couldn't see any juice in it. He was more avid into his sport. He was a good coach. So similarly, this is coming from him. So now we do have the coaching. People know that they need coaching, so we have so many different sort of gurus. Like we have the lifestyle coaches, we have wealth accumulation coaches, we have health coaches, we have all of this. So that is there in the material world. But all of that is just simply there to facilitate our sense gratification. That's what it's all about, the sports and all that. And ultimately, that brings about frustration, because the society today, because the more you get into sanctification, the more you want, the more you need, more frustrated you become, and you can't get enough. And it always leads, Prabhupada says that always leads to sex attraction is the main frustrating sense object of all living entities. And after a while, it's just samanda mateo, that it's very short-lived. And then on top of that, you don't take into consideration all the Baltics, the miseries that are there while we're there. And we don't know how to deal with them. The coach doesn't tell us about the miseries of the mind, the miseries of other living entities that are going to cause you, and the natural disasters. And we've actually witnessed all this in the last 3 years. So for the people who are striving so hard to enjoy the material world, what's happened to them in the last 3 years? Just think about it. The atmics, the miseries caused by the mind of isolation because of the disease, the adibotics, they're always there to take your money or to harass you, the adidavics or the catastrophes, they're always there. So they're there to they're a part of Krishna's creation, they're also there, and they're there to actually help us understand Ato Brahma Jignasha, what is life really all about? And to find that, we need to go to a spiritual master. So a spiritual master, in modern terminology, he's our coach, that he can help us to understand through and navigate us through spiritual life. He can help us with all of this. He's the lifestyle coach, the motivational coach, the wealth acquisition coach, even though it's spiritual wealth. Spiritual wealth is lasting. The material acquisition coach, he can only give you so much money and then you have to leave it behind in this lifetime. But with spiritual wealth, it just keeps going on eternally. So this is the Guru, the spiritual master. So he helps us understand the reality from the illusion, that illusion that we're thinking that we're this bodies. So Srila Prabhupada explains that we should get out of this material world. There's no fit place for a gentleman. Hey, it's Kali Yuga. Get out while you can. But what is the end game? Well, the end game, some people will say, well, this is it. We want to get out of this place and we don't want to come back here again. But others say, the saints in the Shastras, they say that they prayed that they don't care whether they're born here time and time again, but they're duty bound to try and turn this misguided civilization around and put it back on the right path. Put everybody back on the path of the Godhead. That is the main game. That is bhakti. That is devotional service for the Supreme Lord. And in that service, one wants to please the spiritual master, because that is the mood of all the spiritual masters now, the cyclic succession, that they want all living entities to go back to Godhead. So we perform this act, and then spiritual masters pleased, Krishna's pleased, we will get the mercy. So we have a few seconds left. If anybody had a question from yesterday or today, or a comment, we can take one or two comments. Does anybody want to say anything? Oh, we've had 4 days of it, it's all been said. Anybody? We've just passed 8:30, so time's run out. Jai. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai.